Welcome to the Sacred Geometry Workshop video. This is a video of the workshop. The workshop will be a little bit different. There will be more time to draw, and at the end of the workshop there will be time to draw a more complex sacred geometry. This will not be in the video. The instructions for this more complex geometry can be found in the description below the video. Also, this is a talk about sacred geometry. I used to give more talks about sacred geometry, but I noticed that really if you want to understand what sacred geometry is, and I really wanted to explain what sacred geometry is, but it's best understood by drawing it, so that's why it became a workshop. First I want to talk a little bit about myself and how I got involved in it. At my studies to become a geography teacher, I was allowed to write a bachelor thesis or graduating papers about ancient megalithic buildings and how they kind of prove that there is an ancient civilization unknown to the history books that predates other civilizations. And I was very happy to do this because for a long time I was very interested in this subject. And during all my research into this subject, I also bumped into the same, time and time again, I bumped into the same geometrical patterns, shapes, the same symbolism, and the same numerology that's all connected with sacred geometry. So therefore I started drawing sacred geometry, and drawing it was also very fascinating because when you draw it, you start seeing new patterns. And it's like intuitively you feel the whole and these patterns emerge. But if you really want to understand what you're doing, you have to be very precise and systematic on the other hand. So it's like this really nice and balanced brain activity. And that helped me develop it because I was doing it hours and hours on end. So this is how I got into the whole sacred geometry stuff. And it also gave me lots of insights, but I hope more of that will become apparent during the workshop. The materials that we will be using is the compass and what you would call the square or the straight edge. You will only use the straight edge of it or a ruler. And we can't use anything else. We can't even measure. And that's because sacred geometry is based upon certain principles, and behind these principles there is a whole philosophy. And what this philosophy actually is difficult to explain and needs to be experienced, and will get more clear during the workshop. The goals of the workshop are for the participants to be able to recognize and draw sacred geometry more easily, and the overlapping goal of that is that you get more of a grasp of the holistic aspect of reality. The holistic reality becomes more easy to experience, so to say. What that means is hopefully also something I can make a little bit more clear during the workshop. First, I want to give a really short explanation to what sacred geometry is, or what it's like a definition more to say. And well, the idea of sacred geometry is that there are certain basic geometrical shapes that you see repeated everywhere in nature, in chemistry, like the molecules and stuff, and crystals and stuff like that. And the second thing that goes with that is that these patterns are not there arbitrarily, but that they are created in a systematic way, and that's why you can only use these materials. And the idea is that consciousness in an infinite void starts exploring, and through exploring creates dimensions, shapes, space, reality. How this happens, we are going to experience ourselves by drawing it. So what if you have that infinite void that could also be an infinite consciousness? It doesn't really matter because there's nothing defining what is what. It's an infinite void, so like its center is everywhere and nowhere. It's infinitely large, infinitely small, it doesn't matter. There's no time because nothing is moving that defines time. But what if at a certain moment, which is totally irrelevant when, this like infinite consciousness starts to define itself and says, here is where I start and this is where my perception ends. Well, that's the first thing that we are going to draw, is that you take the compass and you put the point in the center of your paper and make a small circle not bigger than 5 centimeters in diameter. And then, according to the rules of sacred geometry, and notice this is just consciousness defining itself. This is no reality. This is no geometric shape in space, and this is no reality yet. Of course, a circle is a geometric shape, but this is no reality yet. What the consciousness does is the only thing that it can do is, and this is one of the rules of sacred geometry, it can only work on what it already knows. So what it only can do is mirror itself, project itself on the edge of its perception, and say, what if there is another I there, another me? So this consciousness does that, and what you can do is you put the point of the compass on the edge of the circle that you draw, and you draw exactly the same size circle. And now you could say the consciousness had duplicated itself, has mirrored itself, and here comes the concept of duality. It's also called the Vesica Pisces because it looks like the zodiac sign Pisces. So what we have now is duality, and it's actually 2 points of consciousness observing each other, or its consciousness observing a mirror itself. And between these 2 points of observation, a distance is defined. And this is the first like geometric shape, the first reality, a definition of a distance between 2 points. And between the 2 circles we can draw certain lines and already create a few geometrical shapes. An interesting thing is that this, according to some, can be read in many ancient texts, and that also the Bible or parts of the Bible are like something that is created out of these ancient texts. And these are then the first 2 steps or days of creation, and this is what is in the Bible. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God separated the water above the earth from the water on the earth, placing the sky in between the 2. And then God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters." Well, that's what it sounds like. It's like infinite waters being split, and because of they are being split, a reality is being created, a firmament, a sky is being created. And in that God puts the celestial bodies, and so the Bible continues. But these are the first 2 days of creation, and now I want you to draw the other 5 days of creation. And you do that by continuing drawing circles around the first 2 circles. But the only place where consciousness can draw another circle is where the 2 circles intersect. So you put the point of the compass at one of the intersections and draw another circle there. And because you do that, you get 2 more intersections, and you can draw 2 circles on these intersections. Make sure you only go around the first circle to complete the 7 days of creation. These 7 days of creation are called the seed of life, and from the seed of life different geometrical patterns can spawn. I will show them by skipping through this video. So first you have the beginning, and here you see like the first circle, and then the second circle comes. And it's all done by consciousness exploring with certain geometrical limitations, the space around it. And what you can see is that from these 7 circles, or this is much further in the video, but from these 7 circles certain geometrical patterns can be formed. Here we see a hexagon, and it goes on and on and on. And yeah, it's a kind of a seed for certain geometrical patterns. So of course now I would let people draw the 7 circles and help if needed. But now I will go to the next slide in the video. And here I want to talk a little bit about how sacred geometry is related to philosophy, my philosophy, and also a bit how people see that it's related to science, or how I see that it's related to science. And when we talk about philosophy, it's this dualistic thing I want to talk about, that something can only be defined when it's opposed to another phenomenon. You know, something is only big in comparison to something that is smaller. It's all relative. And of course this is kind of like a but how is this like a philosophy thing? Well, I can see it almost everywhere, but where I can see it in a very rudimentary manner, this manifestation of duality to define reality, is within my own identity. So I could see myself as a proud geography teacher, and then it goes really well with like my students, and they have high grades, and you know, and which makes like me feel like project a lot of pride and feel a lot of pride, and yeah, and going totally into this pride trip. But then suddenly it would all turn around, and all my students would fail, and everyone would say, you're a sham, you know, it's all worthless. Then I will feel the amount of shame as in the same amount as the amount of pride that I've like manifested before. So that the more proud I thought I was, the more shame I will feel when the opposite turns out to be true. And what I've actually done is I've projected this duality, this coin with 2 sides, and that is pride on the one side and shame on the other side. I've projected this, and I've placed myself consciously on one side and unconsciously on the shame side. And I've noticed that this is a hard truth about how we create our own identity, but through identity we also experience the world. So it's also a hard truth about how we experience the world. And like another thing I heard just a couple of weeks ago is what was it again? The amount that you really want to have something is equal to the amount that you are afraid that you will never get it. And this was also really mean, but I felt, this is kind of like, might be very true. Well, this is another example of this philosophy part. And I want to talk a little bit more about the science part. The first thing I want to talk about is a very famous experiment. And the experiment is called the double slit experiment. And what they do there is they throw balls of matter, electrons. They throw them through two slits. And what happens if they throw electron by electron? They notice that these electrons are not behaving like electrons, but they are more behaving like a wave of possible locations in space-time, like the circles we are drawing. And that only when electrons and when they put a measuring device there, that's an interesting thing. It's like the waveform is broken and the electron starts to behave like a particle again. And some say it's easy. Well, the field of the measuring device interacts with the electron, and therefore this is not it doesn't have anything to do with sacred geometry. And I don't know. It's what happens is, you could say that the circle collides with another circle, and a definite point is defined within time-space. So here we see kind of this sacred geometry idea in how quantum mechanics work, how the smallest particles work. And we can also see how electrons and atoms interact with each other. Makes also geometrical shapes, like the shapes of molecules are these shapes, and the shapes of the shapes of crystals are like this. You can see here on the slide dodecahedron shapes. I forgot what kind of a mineral it is, but I've seen it in different colors. I've seen it in real life as well. And that is where you recognize sacred geometry in reality, in a way. And also interesting thing is that you can see it in nature a lot, and I will tell more about that. But first I want you to draw another 6 circles around the 7 circles that you've already drawn. So you look at this picture and you place the 6 circles around the seed of life to get what they call the egg of life. And if you would erase the lines within the circles, you will get these 8 eggs, and this is actually the most efficient way to go into a bigger, we call it membrane, and this is what cell division is. We were this. We were 8 eggs, or 8 cells. Sorry, in an egg, in a thing. I don't know the biology that good, but once we were this blob of cells, and that is why it's called the egg of life. Another interesting place where we can see sacred geometry is when we go into a consciousness altering experience, or a consciousness expanding experience is what it's called. And you can do this with different techniques, like breathing exercises, or fasting, or taking lots of mushrooms and stuff like that. Important is, of course, also the setting and stuff like that. But the interesting thing about it is that people that do this time and time and again come back with the same reoccurring geometric shapes and the same symbolism that has a lot to do with sacred geometry. So I'm thinking, does our is it something outside of us, like a substructure of reality that we are experiencing, a different layer of reality that we are experiencing, or is it more that by our fantasies are really and our brains are really excited during these consciousness expanding experiences, and it starts random generating, and we have kind of an affinity. Our consciousness, our mind, our being kind of has an affinity or propensity to create these symbols. But then I'm thinking, yeah, then these symbols, these geometric shapes, is also the thing we use as a metric to define our reality. So and I was thinking, like, whether one of the propositions is true, I don't think it really matters, because we can use these rudimentary tools of our experience to understand ourselves and the reality better. So what I want you to do now is draw 6 more circles. It's kind of like in between the circles of the egg of life. Here is the egg of life, and I want you to draw circles in between, 6 more circles, to get this shape. Start drawing now, but of course this is the video, and I will just go to the next slide. This is inside the Assyrian. The images that you see are inside the Assyrian, and the Assyrian is a huge megalithic temple in Egypt. It's like deep in the sediment, and it's really different than other temples in Egypt. It's made out of giant quartzite and granite stones that are like really perfectly straight, and in walls fit together perfectly, with like you can't put like a piece of paper between the stones. And these stones are huge, like up to 100 tons. And on one of these stones, there you can find the flower of life pattern. And some say it's burnt into the wall, and others say, it's just red ochre. I don't know, but it's in this very special temple. This temple that is really different than the rest of Egypt. And I want you to draw this flower of life pattern the way that it's drawn in the Assyrian in Egypt. And what you do is you draw a circle around what you have already drawn, like this. Of course, at the center is the eye, but I think this images this very, very well, so you can really see it's like 3 circles wide, the entire thing, and you can keep your eye on the center circle, the first circle you drew. But around it, I want you to draw one big circle. So what you do is you widen the compass in such a way that you can really go to the pupil of the eye, and like the center of the first circle that you draw, and to the edge of the outer circle, and you draw a circle around it, so it will hit 6 points on the outer circle, the big circle. So you draw the big circle around the smaller circles that you've already drawn. Well, then what happens is that you see that you have to make smaller circles. So here comes the tricky part. You make the compass small again, and the same size as the first circle you drew, the same size as all the small circles. And you have to actually draw parts here of the circles that are actually outside of the big circle that you drew, to get the actual flower of life pattern. And to do this, you have to draw circles that are actually outside of that like initial 3 by 3 circle grid that we drew. Well, I of course will help during the workshop with this, but you can try and do it at home. It can help drawing the circle or drawing this hexagon around the small circles that you drew in the previous slides. The flower of life is a recurring pattern. We can see it in many places in the world, but the most intriguing place for me is this place in Egypt. Then I want to talk a little bit about sacred geometry in architecture. we can find in the pyramids on the Giza Plateau and some other pyramids like the Bent Pyramid, we can find certain geometrical precision or certain constants. And the interesting thing is why these constants are important is that the pyramids are also very precise. They're very precision built, and they have these constants, so it means it's not arbitrary. For instance, the king's chamber here is made out of red granite stones that weigh multiple tons, that fit together perfectly, and the walls are very, very flat in the king's chamber, and it holds exactly the ratios for phi. And also the Great Pyramid holds the ratio of phi to a very high precision. I will tell a little bit more about that in a later slide. There are other examples of where you can find geometry in architecture, the Parthenon, Gothic cathedrals, but also in the Assyrian, and many other places are built with these principles. So we've drawn the flower of life, and the flower of life is actually what you would call a grid, a template for creating all sacred geometry. So yeah, you can draw like lines between the circles and the points between the circles, and out of these lines many geometrical shapes can be created. They can be two-dimensional, like the septagram, pentagon, pentagram, hexagram, but they can be three-dimensional, like the Platonic solids, the icosahedron, dodecahedron, stuff like that. Some people also talk about Metatron's cube. Yeah, these are the geometrical shapes that can be created, and this template can be called the ether, ether, and it's like the consciousness that creates the reality. The straight lines are the reality, the matter, and the circles are the ether. It's also like these waves of electrons. They're circles, they are possible locations in space-time, and where they collide, a distance, a place is being defined in space-time, and certainly way of matter, reality. Well, that's the idea about that part of sacred geometry. We can also see really beautiful. We can see a water crystal, and why I have this water crystal here is because water arranges itself electromagnetically through H bonds and stuff like that. And when you freeze it, especially when it's like a little bit still and stuff, or when you look at a snowflake under a microscope, you can see these like geometric shapes, and this because of the shape of the water molecule and the way it arranges itself with other molecules. The interesting thing is that water can, like, electromagnetically kind of remember the shape of other things that were in it. So of course it arranges itself around the things that are in the water. In the same fashion it arranges itself in this snowflake. But if they're like, yeah, and the thing that goes into the water also has a certain like what do you call it, yeah, plus and minus from like molecules have certain plus and minus electro what do you call it, magnetic properties. And yeah, the water arranges itself in this beautiful geometrical shape around the things that are in it. And when you take the things out, water still holds the same, or still can hold the same, what do you call it, energy signature of the thing that was in it, in that geometrical way water does it. And I think this is a really interesting thing when you look at life and stuff like that, because of course protein goes in water, and you know, we are protein and water, and a kind of water is kind of a sort of a, you could say, memory, geometrical memory deposit, which kind of brings me to the next thing, because these like electromagnetic properties are also electromagnetic vibrations of electrons and stuff like that. And I don't know exactly if there is a connection, but I want to go to acoustic vibrations to show what acoustic vibrations can do. And because what happens if you, and I will show it in the, it will be visible in the video here. If you have a malleable medium and you put vibrations through the malleable medium, at certain frequencies, geometrical shapes that are coinciding with the geometrical shapes you get from drawing lines in the flower of life, they will appear. So the same geometrical shapes will appear from like shaking, putting vibrations through a malleable medium. And the interesting thing about this is that you can't say this frequency will always create this geometrical shape. It's of course dependent on the medium that you use. But what is consistent is the ratios of when these geometrical patterns occur, how the frequencies relate to each other is in an orderly fashion with whole number ratios, and that stays consistent no matter what malleable medium you use. So you could say it's like a musical scale, and when the ratios of frequencies are harmonic to each other, also the geometry will be harmonic. And this is an interesting thing, which of course, I'm creating sound now. But if I was an opera singer, I could make it really loud and a really perfect tone. And then okay, if there's an opera singer here, and I would sing through it, and I'm false probably, and what will happen is that a shape, a sound kind of goes in a vortex motion, and if it's a very harmonic sound, the geometry of that vortex will be harmonic, and we can hear that. But if there's a false note being sung through it, this harmony will be disturbed. And it's not there is such a thing necessarily as a false note, because it just depends on where you start your harmonics, your musical scale. But two notes can be false when you compare them to each other. So the interesting thing is that we can hear if a certain geometrical sound, a certain sound, the geometry of a sound is harmonic with the geometry of another sound. That's what I'm saying. That's the thing what we can hear. We can hear if two tones are in harmony with each other or are false with each other. Well, why do I think this is also an interesting thing is that you could say that I saw it like this once. What if there is indeed an infinite water? There's a water, I'm laying inside water, and it's really dark, and there's only a dim light coming from the side that I'm not seeing. And this water, I'm looking through the surface of this water, but for the rest it's dark. The rest is dark, so I can't see anything. I cannot define anything. I don't even know how high the water is or anything. And but then there comes a sound, and the water starts going up like making waves, like an up and a down, a duality, like contrast is being created. And now I can see the water. And what this reminds me of is that also in the Bible, or in some ancient gospel, is that is an important ancient gospel, but I don't know what scripture exactly, but and that is, in the beginning was the Word. So that there is indeed an infinite ocean of consciousness, undefinable field that is being moved by sound or a vibration of some sort. And this also goes with the Hindu idea of Om, and this is the primordial sound, but it's also known as God. Now I want to talk a little bit. Finally, I can talk a little bit about more about the Great Pyramid. Well, the Great Pyramid, it's built of 2.2 million stones, and it's like very perfect. So its sides are exactly aligned with the cardinal directions, and the difference is like most. There are only a few modern buildings that have this precision for very specific purposes, and the insides are also very perfect, like with the big granite stones that fit together perfectly. They weigh up to 80 tons, so this is what's going on with the Great Pyramid. If we look at its precision, I can give you like more and more details, but it's something like, look up, it's got incredible precision. Or do I want to say more about how precise the Great Pyramid is and I think I said the most important things. Yeah, its sides are almost like equal in length and stuff like that. But there's more, and if you want to look it up, look it up. But if we compare the Great Pyramid or these pyramids I mentioned before with the things we have now, the only things that have the same precision are instruments, like medical instruments, musical instruments, instruments for precise measurement. This is more what it looks like, and I can say much and much more about pyramids. I want to give one more details that no mummies were ever found in these pyramids, and it's not like there maybe never were mummies in these pyramids, but this is like a persistent theory that is actually not like proven or anything, with actual mummies coming from these pyramids. And maybe they were there, but maybe that wasn't even the original purpose of the pyramids. Well, I'm kind of going into my whole ancient building stuff, and I don't want to go there too much. You see here at the bottom of the slide, it says different civilization. I want to point to one more thing, and that is, before I start the video, about what is interesting about the Great Pyramid and how it links into sacred geometry and the stuff that we just saw before in the slides. And that's that thing that I want to point to, that has to do more about has to do more with the ancient buildings than the sacred geometry, is that when you go to the pyramids in Egypt, the smallest of the three on the Giza plateau still has part of its original outer casing, and at the bottom, and the stuff at the bottom is made out of granite blocks that fit together perfectly and have these knobs here. And what it is we see this not very much in Egypt, only on a few sites like the Assyrian and like the pyramids. And the interesting thing is that you see this nowhere in Egypt, but you see this in Peru in exactly the same way. And in Peru it's equally inexplicable, or even more difficult to explain, how the ancient Inca would have built with really hard pieces of huge stones that they fit together perfectly, and they have exactly the same protrusions here and many other characteristics, but it's all in my megalithic buildings, ancient civilization thing. So that's just a door I want to open. I'm not going in there too much. Now we're going to this video. I'm going to show you this entire video, and at the end I will talk a little bit about what we've seen. But the first thing I want to again to emphasize is that the pyramid is an device, it's an apparatus that's being used for something, and that you can recognize different geometric shapes within this pyramid, or within the three pyramids of the Giza Plateau, and that also the internal structure coincides with the geometric shape, and that the geometric shape is also a cymatic phenomenon, so it's also something being created by vibrations. Okay, the sound was a little loud here, so I changed the sound. If that distracted you, it was like at a very important part of the video. Please, you can skip back and watch it again, and maybe watch it again regardless. There's lots of stuff going on there. Yeah, but the thing I wanted to emphasize is that what if the pyramid is kind of a musical or a vibratory instrument that has a certain resonance, has a certain frequency, and this frequency coincides with this like septagram vortex shape you can see here, and that has a function. It has a function that it has exactly this shape. And what you could see in the videos, that with the internal structure that is extremely precise and made out of these huge granite stones, they had to get like 900 kilometers upwards the Nile. That it's on purpose there. It's on purpose, this shape and this internal structure, and it has to do with vibrations, sacred geometry, cymatics. Yeah, more about the Great Pyramid is that it's like built with certain stone types in a certain place that would give it certain electromagnetic or electronical properties. There are actually kind of two streams of theory here. The one is that it's an energy device. I would advise to look into what is it called? Christopher Dunn's Giza power plant theory stuff. Look it up. He has 2 books, I think. And yeah, the other stuff is like a wide variety of stuff that say that it's kind of a device for changing human consciousness, and I really like the idea of going inside the pyramid and having a mind-altering experience while the pyramid completely restored is totally vibing, and I'm in the center of it, experiencing this vibe while my consciousness is expanded. I've had really great experiences with singing bowls, for instance. So what if this is a huge device for lifting consciousness in such a way? So let's go to the next slide. There's another place where we can see a lot of sacred geometry, and that's in nature. And in nature we can very often see the like Fibonacci series, the golden spiral or golden rule. I'm not sure what it's called, and it also yeah, has a lot to do with fractals. It has a lot of connection with fractals. And yeah, why is that? Because nature, it's the most efficient way to put like information and grow out of it, like make it a lot bigger, so shapes that can grow out of itself. And the most beautiful thing is like this Romanesco, but also in buildings, yeah, humans have used it. So this is a temple in India, and this is a beautiful mosque in Iran. So there was one thing I forgot to say about last slide, and it's also in this slide. Here's where like the challenges for after the talk part starts. If you really want to create the septagram, so the pyramid like vortex vibration shape, you can look in the description below, and in the workshop I will give the papers, like the instruction paper pamphlet that people will use to draw the septagram from the flower of life that they've already drawn. So this flower of life we've already drawn is a template, and from that you can create the septagram, and then you put up your hand if you want to create the septagram, and I will hand out the instruction form for that. And here is if you want to draw the pentagram, which is very much related to the Fibonacci series and fractals and stuff like that, and the golden rule. Yeah, you can say, yeah, I want to do this. They will also be in the description below, or I can hand them out right now. If like in the workshop, I would hand them out. And then we go to the final slide. And here I want to talk about Merkabah. It's like kind of well known, but I'm not sure if it's like studied like in a broad way. They have heard like many explanations about what it is. One that stuck with me, it's that the marriage of the Ka and the Ba, and it's like an Egyptian explanation of it. And it's that like your ego has to behold two modes of being at the same time for there to be balance and spiritual growth. And the two modes of being are two sets of relations between certain archetypes. So the Ba is the relation between the soul and the body, and a bunch of other relations. And the Ka is relation between the mind and the cosmos, and a bunch of other relations. And yeah, Ka is like having a lucid dream and stuff like that. So that was like one explanation, and the Merkabah is when you like behold them both. But it's also the two like interlacing tetrahedrons we can see here. That's also what is called the Merkabah. It's like two opposing tetrahedrons inside of each other. And you can create the Merkabah in the flower of life by using the interlaced triangle of Solomon. And it also looks a bit like Oh, it also looks a bit like a Merkabah. And this is like an interesting occult symbol. And I want to read something about this signal that was written by Manly P. Hall in Secret Teachings of All Ages. And I really loved this book because it was just short, and by Manly P. Hall it was really good. Some of you might know him. And he just has short explanations of these symbols and teachings and stuff like that. So this is what is written about this symbol. It's the double or interlaced triangle of Solomon, represented by the two ancients of the Kabbalah, the Macroprosophus and the Microprosophus, the god of light and the god of reflections. White and black Jehovah, mercy and vengeance. Out of the great sea of eternity rise the head and the shoulders of the Jehovah. No, I'm wrong. Out of the great sea of eternity rise the head and shoulders of the ancient and holy one, whose inverted image is mirrored in the deep. Much better. And what you can see here again is this principle of duality and the ether and the matter. That reality is also a sort of a projection and being observed. Stuff like that. Infinite consciousness, projecting itself, mirroring itself, that kind of stuff. Also, we can see here that the way the compass and square are placed in this symbol of Freemasonry is similar to this double interlaced triangle of Solomon. Now, what is interesting about this shape is that it can be used in the Flower of Life to both find the septagram in a very easy way. I think you can see my mouse, right? So to make the septagram in a really easy way, and it can be used to make the Merkabah in a really easy way. So it's interesting, like this shape that the Freemasons have with these tools can be used to make two very interesting symbols within sacred geometry. And if you want to draw the Merkabah, then put up your hand or look in the description below, and I will you will have the instruction form to do so. Just at the end, I want to say that this picture was intriguing me for a long time. You have the Flower of Life here, you have the septagram here, there's a link to the pineal gland, is the seat of consciousness, which has a lot to do with maybe tripping and psychedelics and mind-altering experiences and the way we experience reality. It's a really long story, and I think another talk or workshop or whatever. But here you can see all this geometry together, and I was fascinated by this image long before I understood what the geometries in it have to do with each other. I wish you good luck with drawing either the septagram or the fractals or the Merkabah from the Flower of Life. From this you can draw more stuff. You can make it even bigger. You don't have to stop with the final pentagram or with the first pentagram. You can continue drawing until the entire paper that you're using is filled up with sacred geometry. Like I said, from what you draw, if you continue the lines and the circles, new patterns will arise. So I would advise you to totally fill it up with what arises from what you have already drawn. Good luck, And well, that was it.